Welcome back, Focus Learners. I am seriously so pumped to have you here for this explainer today. We're going to dive headfirst into a really wild mystery, one that literally bridges the gap between our wildest human imagination and the actual grounded reality of our planet's ancient past. Just think about it for a second. What if I told you that one of the absolute greatest fantasy creatures in all of human history might have actually been invented just because early people stumbled across dinosaur bones? I mean, dragons are everywhere, right? They pop up in stories from almost every single corner of the globe. Ancient civilizations were whispering these crazy tales of enormous, terrifying beasts way before modern science or paleontology was even a thing. But here's the stark reality of the situation. Dinosaurs are real and dragons are not. So why do they feel so deeply connected? Well, let's find out.
And that brings us to the ultimate question we're going to unravel today. Did ancient people actually see dinosaurs? Like, did our early human ancestors truly witness these colossal beasts roaming the earth right alongside them? Or is it more likely that just discovering massive, totally unexplainable fossils buried in the dirt was enough to fuel our greatest, most terrifying global myths? Today, we are taking a trip millions of years back into Earth's deep history to uncover the truth. And honestly, the answer is absolutely fascinating. It might just surprise you.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We're looking at a massive contrast here between historical reality and worldwide folklore. On one side, you've got real dinosaurs. These were living, breathing animals that existed millions of years ago and literally ruled the Earth. No magic, just biology. On the other side, we have mythical dragons. And depending on where you look in the world, these fantasy creatures were seen as fire-breathing symbols of danger in Europe, majestic entities that brought rain and good fortune in China, or even these giant serpent-like creatures over in India. So how did the grounded reality of ancient biology translate into this rich, mythical tapestry of human legend?
To really understand dragons, we first need to truly understand dinosaurs. We have to set the scene. Picture the Earth around 230 million years ago, right in the middle of the Triassic period. The world looked completely different than it does today. The continents weren't separated by these vast oceans we know now. They were actually locked together into one massive, single landmass called Pangaea. The climate was dramatically hotter. Huge, dense forests covered massive parts of the planet. And here's a fun fact for you. When people imagine dinosaurs, they usually picture giant monsters right out of the gate. But the very first dinosaurs, they were actually quite small, two-legged animals. That was just the very beginning of their incredible journey.
Let's see how this builds across deep time. Over millions of years, dinosaurs evolved into just an unbelievable variety of shapes and sizes. As we saw, the Triassic period is where they first appeared on the stage. Then, things shift into the Jurassic period, which is when those truly giant dinosaurs became dominant, literally shaking the Earth with their footsteps. Finally, we reach the Cretaceous period, which was the final age of the dinosaurs before, well, everything changed. This entire era lasted for an astonishing 160 million years.
To truly put things into perspective, just think about this comparison. Dinosaurs spent a massive 160 million years on Earth. Now compare that against the time humans have existed, which is only around 300,000 years. Our time on this planet is incredibly brief. It is barely a sliver compared to the vast, sweeping era of the dinosaurs. They ruled the Earth for an unbelievably long time, adapting and evolving in ways that are honestly hard for us to even comprehend today.
Imagine for a second standing next to some of these creatures at the absolute height of their evolution. I mean, one of the largest dinosaurs ever discovered was the Argentinosaurus. This animal reached lengths of over 30 meters. Just try to picture that in your head right now. That is longer than several city buses lined up end to end. And of course, you had the Tyrannosaurus rex, history's most famous top predator, rocking those powerful jaws and massive sharp teeth. The breathtaking, cinematic scale of these giants is precisely what leaves us in such awe today.
But you know, nature is full of surprises. While we totally marvel at the giants, not all dinosaurs were massive. Scientists have discovered tons of small, feathered dinosaurs. Some were small enough that they could comfortably sit right on your shoulder. In fact, modern birds are actually direct descendants of dinosaurs. It's a fantastic, honestly kind of hilarious twist of evolutionary fate. When you're looking out your window at a pigeon, an eagle, or just a chicken scratching around in the yard, you are quite literally looking at the distant, living relatives of those ancient giants. So in a way, they never entirely disappeared.
However, the age of the giant reptiles did come to a very sudden, very violent end. 66 million years ago,
That's the number. 66 million years ago, one of the biggest and most devastating events in Earth's history went down. In what was basically a single geological instant, everything on our planet fundamentally changed. The world that had nurtured these incredible creatures for 160 million years was just abruptly shattered.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how it happened. It was a totally deadly chain reaction. Step 1. A giant asteroid strikes Earth, near what is now Mexico, releasing enormous, just unimaginable amounts of energy. Step 2. Massive clouds of dust and smoke completely fill the atmosphere, totally blocking out the sunlight. Step 3. Without sunlight, the plants die off, causing the entire global food chain to collapse. And finally, Step 4. Mass extinction. Almost all non-bird dinosaurs were completely wiped out. For millions of years after that, the world belonged to mammals, and eventually, humans appeared on the scene.
But remember this, the dinosaurs were gone, but their bones definitely were not. Now I want you to pivot with me for a second and step right into a historical detective story. Imagine you're living thousands of years ago. You have absolutely no modern science, you have zero concept of paleontology or geological time. Then, one day, you're walking through a valley and you discover giant, petrified bones sticking right out of the side of a mountain. Skulls the size of boulders, ribs as long as trees. What on earth would you think? How would you even begin to explain that to your village?
Well, without a scientific framework, you have to rely entirely on your imagination and, let's face it, your fears. Dragons are largely what ancient people believed these mysterious giant bones belonged to, before the science of paleontology even existed. And honestly, it made perfect logical sense to our ancestors. I mean, if you find a skull with teeth the size of daggers, you're going to assume a monster lived there, right? Ancient Greeks told stories of giant serpent creatures, and this exact pattern of logic echoed all across the ancient world. Now, what's really interesting about this is how these myths took on a totally local flavor depending on the region. In medieval Europe, dragons became these intense symbols of danger, power, and evil, often depicted breathing fire and hoarding gold. But look over at China. Unlike European dragons, Chinese dragons were usually not evil at all. They were deeply respected symbols of wisdom, controllers of rain, and bringers of good fortune. Meanwhile, in India, their mythology spoke of giant ancient serpent beings. The bones they were finding were exactly the same, but the cultures interpreted these monsters through their own, totally unique lenses.
So the crucial point here is understanding exactly how this worldwide phenomenon took root. Why did so many totally disconnected cultures create such similar ideas? Well, scientists and historians point to three main theories. First off, humans just naturally fear large predators. It is quite literally baked into our psychology. Second, the undeniable discovery of unusual, giant fossils all over the world provided physical proof that these monsters existed. And third, as trade routes opened up, these monster stories traveled between civilizations, evolving and changing over time. It's this perfect, crazy mix of human psychology and accidental paleontology.
But we definitely need to separate the myth from the reality here. Pop culture absolutely loves to show movie monsters roaring like dragons, breathing fire, or acting like unstoppable evil forces. But real dinosaurs were just animals. Many of them were actually covered in feathers, kind of like giant ground-dwelling birds. They cared for their young, they migrated, and they behaved just like normal wildlife does today. Nature is incredible for sure, but it doesn't create magical, fire-breathing fantasy monsters.
Oh, and here is a fantastic, totally surprising fact that constantly trips up pop culture. You know those massive, leathery-winged flying creatures you always see swooping down in dinosaur movies? The pterosaurs? Yeah, they were an entirely different group of animals. They were flying reptiles, absolutely, but they were not actually dinosaurs. The media loves to mix all prehistoric life together into one big, epic, dragon-like aesthetic, but the scientific reality is much more diverse and categorized than that.
Which brings us right back to that ultimate lingering question that so many people still ask today. Did humans ever see living non-bird dinosaurs? Did our early ancestors ever literally have to run and hide from a living Tyrannosaurus rex? It's a super thrilling image, right? The kind of thing you see in comic books and movies, where cavemen are battling giant reptiles for survival. But what does the actual hard timeline say?
Well, the timeline settles the mystery definitively. Humans and dinosaurs were tens of millions of years apart. There was absolutely no coexistence. Zero. Humans appeared tens of millions of years after the non-bird dinosaurs vanished in that massive asteroid impact. Science strictly proves our ancestors never, ever ran from a living dinosaur. The timing just doesn't line up, no matter how cool it looks in a movie. And yet,
Here is the really beautiful narrative twist of this entire explainer. Humans never met living dinosaurs, but dinosaurs completely influence human culture through our imagination. We never crossed paths while they were alive, but their dead, fossilized bones, just waiting there on the Earth for millions of years, were more than enough to shape our most enduring, powerful global legends. Through our stories, through our imagination, these ancient creatures actually lived on. They became dragons.
Ultimately, it all comes down to how we interpret the evidence right in front of us. Ancient myth looked at these giant bones and created epic stories of magic, monsters, and dragons. Modern science looked at those exact same giant bones and discovered Earth's incredibly vast, lost history. One path created our greatest myths, the other created profound scientific knowledge. But both were inspired by the exact same remnants of the past.
Dinosaurs were real. Dragons were legends. But the line connecting them is absolutely one of the most fascinating aspects of human imagination. Nature truly is just as unbelievable as fantasy. Which leaves us with a provocative question to end on today. What will future civilizations interpret from the remnants of our world when they finally dig us up? Think about that the next time you see a dragon in a movie. If you found this explainer helpful and fascinating, keep feeding that curiosity, and I will see you in our next deep dive.